Good afternoon and welcome to Government House here in Canberra. My name is Gerard Martin and I'm the Secretary to the Council for the Order of Australia and the Secretary to the Australian Bravery Decorations Council. I wish to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on and recognise any other people or families with connection to the lands of the ACT and the region. I acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this city and the region. And I would also like to acknowledge and welcome any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be attending today's event. The Australian Honours System is an important mechanism to recognise and celebrate ordinary people who do extraordinary things. Today is a special day, not only for recipients, but for their families, friends and communities. It is a day when we celebrate a diverse range of impressive achievements and service. We at Government House are privileged to play a small part in the recognition and celebration of that achievement. I hope we can help make today an occasion that you will all recall with pride for years to come. Shortly, I'll invite you to stand, if you're able, as the Governor-General enters the room, and to remain standing for the Australian National Anthem. After I read their names and citations, the recipients will enter the room from the doorway on my right, and once invested, they will leave by the centre aisle to take their seats at the back of the room. At that point, you may like to show your appreciation with a short applause. Ladies and gentlemen, please now stand for the arrival of Her Excellency, the Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia, and the singing of the Australian National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Please take your seats.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to start by acknowledging that we gather today on the lands of the traditional custodians, the Ngunnawal, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present and extend that welcome and acknowledgement to any other people or families with connections to the ACT and surrounding regions, and acknowledge any Aboriginal people who are joining us today. Well, it's a bit of a chilly day here in Canberra outside, but it's a great privilege and pleasure to offer you a very warm welcome into Government House. It's a very special place, as I think you're already discovering, and I hope will continue to do so this afternoon. It is a place of warmth that welcomes every Australian. It belongs to all Australians. And before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge the wonderful work of the RMC band. I think it's lovely to have live music here, and in our celebration later in the afternoon, you'll hear the band again. But they're a wonderful support for us here at Government House, and it's always wonderful to have members of the band to play both the National Anthem and to entertain us later today. So thank you to the team who've joined us here this afternoon. On Investiture Days, Government House echoes with history, excellence, contribution and optimism. There's a current of stories over decades, lived and told by the people who shaped our modern nation in the image of their own energy. Today, we join your stories to theirs and anchor them to our hopes and ambitions for the future. Now, I was recently in this room with my family and friends to celebrate my own investiture prior to being sworn in as your Governor-General. So I do have some empathy for all of you. I understand a little of what you're feeling, particularly those that we will be investing today. There's excitement, some or quite a lot of nerves, pride in your remarkable achievements, and the gratitude to the families, communities and colleagues who have always been there with you. And I know as a result of today and the work you continue to do, you'll have a renewed sense of purpose to carry on your work and encourage others to make their contributions to our country. Now, every year here at Government House, we receive about 25,000 school students who come in visits. It's usually about 3 busloads a day from all over the country and from primary through to secondary school. The team here, the wonderful team here that support me and everyone at Government House, spend some time with those students, explaining the history of Government House, the role of the Governor-General, and putting us in the context of our wonderful, safe, peaceful democracy and where we sit relative to the various other places they visit, Parliament House, new and old, and a number of the other features of our democracy here in Canberra. Now, I try to run down here to this room whenever I can, if I'm in Canberra, just to spend a little bit of time with those students. And it's interesting when I throw the questions over to them, which we do very quickly, because they ask the best questions, I think, of almost any Australian of a Governor-General, without any sense of shame or worry. They ask the best questions, and they always are drawn to the board of the Australian Honours System, which you'll see in the hall as you move to the celebration afterwards, but it normally sits here in front of them, and their eyes are always drawn to the pictures and the stories and the medals and the honours that we award here. We explain the significance of the awards, and they are always so impressed with the stories of honour and the stories that sit behind the awards and honours that we share. We tell them many of the great stories that you're going to hear today and explain how the medals work, how the honours systems work, and we encourage them to go back to their communities and express an interest in their communities nominating people for these great honours. So if I reflect on all of that, I want all of the people we're investing to know, and your friends and family, that as your Governor-General, I have not only the immense privilege of investing you with your honours today, I am also deeply humbled and very, very proud. Now, before I took office, I also took the time to meet with all of the current living former Governors-General. Every one of them told me that it is Investiture days that were some of the most memorable in their terms of office. In fact, my predecessor, the former Governor-General David Hurley, liked to say this: investitures are one of the greatest joys of this role. You cannot help but be uplifted. And having read all of the accomplishments of those that we invested today and all that we've invested this week already, I'm already uplifted and I'm filled with such deep admiration for you all. Now, today has been a long time in the planning. For those of you about to receive your honour, it has been a lifetime in the making. And for our nation, it is a day foreshadowed by 65,000 years of Indigenous culture, shared so generously by the oldest continuing culture in the world, matched with our British institutions of law and democracy, and the vibrant, successful, multicultural society we celebrate as modern Australia. It really is a day to remember. It is often said that honours and award systems are only as good as the people they recognise. And I can say with great confidence, and now a little bit of experience this week, that our Australian system is truly the best system in the world. And that is because of the people that we will be investing today. Your dedication to serving your communities and our nation is essential to the optimism, the confidence and pride of all Australians as we build and continue to build our remarkable nation's future together. From the most extraordinary array of disciplines, contributions and excellence, you all exemplify the depth of Australian values. At this time of the year, investiture ceremonies are being held right across the country. In every capital city, in every government house, remarkable Australians, like those that we will hear about today, are gathering to be recognised for outstanding service or exceptional accomplishments and achievements. And while every recipient's accomplishment is as unique as their own stories and character, they are all united by the qualities of kindness, care, respect and generosity that sit at the heart of everything that you do. You care for people and communities. You care for excellence, discovery, creativity and ingenuity. You care for our institutions and our stunningly beautiful continent and our natural environment. You care for the diversity that we celebrate in all its forms and the possibilities that rest with a deep commitment to inclusion and belonging. I know that the joy and optimism that I feel in your company today is shared right across the country, and particularly in the communities, families, and organisations that you represent. I hope all of you, those that are here to be invested, and the families and friends who will witness this ceremony, are also uplifted and inspired, and so very, very proud. Before closing, I want to acknowledge that whilst today is largely about celebration and honouring extraordinary contributions, some of those today are quite difficult moments to recall and involve quite sad moments. And there may be moments where you might want to take a moment just to reflect on the fact that there are difficulties that we often acknowledge in today's ceremony, and you'll see some of that. Please, if you don't feel so well, let us know, because these are important moments to acknowledge very difficult times as well as service to our country. Congratulations to everybody today. I look forward to spending more time with you this afternoon and spending time with each of your families and friends and capturing this moment so that you have it on record. And I look forward to sharing the stories of today as I travel the country and talk about why our honour systems matter so much and why you are extraordinary Australians. It's going to give me great pride to give you your honours today. Thank you.
Your Excellency, to be appointed a member of the Order of Australia in the General Division as Robin Lynn Henderson for significant service to public administration and to social welfare. Improving social justice and welfare for groups affected by systemic discrimination and lack of equal opportunity has underpinned Ms. Henderson's long, varied and impactful career. Ms. Henderson founded the Canberra Women's Refuge in the late 1970s and was a member for the Division of Canberra in the Australian Capital Territory House of Assembly around the same time, briefly stepping into the position of acting leader in 1982. Ms. Henderson was also a policy consultant within departments and commissions, including the Australian Crime Commission, and was a cabinet advisor in the Solomon Islands. Ms. Henderson is a strong advocate for women's involvement at all levels of decision-making and has made an outstanding and lasting contribution to public administration in Australia and the South Pacific. Ms. Robin Lynn Henderson, appointed a member of the Order. To be appointed a member of the Order of Australia in the General Division, the late Miss Sophie Trevitt, to be accepted by Mr. Thomas Swan. For significant service to social justice and to human rights protection for youth and Indigenous people. Ms. Trevitt was an extraordinarily dedicated and tireless advocate for human rights protections in the ACT. She was highly effective in the criminal justice field, particularly for First Nations Australians, women escaping domestic violence, and young people. She served diligently in a range of roles as a lawyer, commentator, and organisational leader. She was instrumental in the push to increase the minimum age of criminal responsibility in the ACT, a first in Australia. Her ability to be a voice for those experiencing acute vulnerability was second to none. Ms. Trevitt achieved real and tangible systemic reforms that will provide a lasting and positive legacy for our community. The late Ms. Sophie Trevitt, appointed a member of the Order and accepted by Mr. Thomas Swan. To be awarded a Medal of the Order of Australia in the General Division, Mrs. Barbara Bowen, for service to the community of Canberra. Mrs. Bowen moved to Australia from the United Kingdom and began working as a nurse at the Canberra Hospital at a time when it overlooked paddocks. Her nursing career took her from delivering babies to community nursing to end-of-life care for high-needs patients during their final years. Mrs. Bowen also helped set up Campus Childcare Collective at the Australian National University, allowing student parents to continue their studies, and with her husband Alan, sponsored European migrants who helped build Canberra's iconic government buildings and embassies. Every person whose life was touched by Mrs. Bowen felt her endless energy and passion for her work. Mrs. Barbara Bowen, awarded the Medal of the Order. To be awarded a Medal of the Order of Australia in the General Division, Ms. Margaret Findlater-Smith, for service to women's affairs in a range of organisations. Mrs. Findlater-Smith has worked tirelessly to improve the lives of women and girls in the ACT, Australia, and in several overseas countries. She has held a number of positions within the National Council of Women Australia, including National President and Vice President of the ACT branch. She has also been president of Seroptimist International in Canberra and Perth. Mrs. Findlater-Smith was a member of the Equality Rights Alliance for over a decade. She was founding member, inaugural secretary, and treasurer of the Women's Royal Australian Navy Service Naval Women's Association. Her immense knowledge and experience in the civil organisation space and understanding of the women's advocacy movement has been transformative, invaluable, and inspiring. Mrs. Margaret Findlater-Smith, awarded the Medal of the Order. To be awarded the Conspicuous Service Cross, Captain Jody Bastian, for outstanding devotion to duty in managing the defence response to cases of historical abuse as Director of the Defence Response Unit in the Australian Defence Force Headquarters. In delivering Defence's response to victims of historic abuse, Captain Bastian demonstrated exceptional devotion, care, and compassion. Captain Bastian led a team engaged in sensitive and confronting work that informed the continued improvement of Defence's culture. She provided tailored support and response options to victims of historic abuse, personally managing the most difficult cases and regularly working with victims in an effort to bring a personal sense of calm and resolution. Her efforts have provided an enduring positive impact for victims. Captain Bastian's performance within a personally demanding and often confronting appointment is of the highest order and in the finest traditions of the Royal Australian Navy and the Australian Defence Force. Captain Jody Bastian, awarded the Conspicuous Service Cross. To be awarded the Conspicuous Service Cross, Lieutenant Colonel David Evans, for outstanding devotion to duty on Operation Mazurka as the Commander, Australian Contingent and Force Operations Team Commander in the Multinational Force and Observer Headquarters, South Camp, Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, from October 2021 to October 2022. Lieutenant Colonel Evans excelled in meeting his operational portfolio by guiding and mentoring his team of 26 Australian personnel in a complex environment affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. His achievements included enhancements to the mission's operations, planning processes, reporting requirements, force protection, and movement procedures. Lieutenant Colonel Evans' contribution was of the highest order and served to strengthen the reputation of the Australian Defence Force with international partners. Lieutenant Colonel David Evans, awarded the Conspicuous Service Cross. To be awarded the Conspicuous Service Cross, Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Howard, for outstanding achievement in the development of infantry fighting vehicle capabilities in the Australian Army. Lieutenant Colonel Howard has demonstrated outstanding dedication, judgment and skill as the leader of the Infantry Fighting Vehicle project in the Australian Army headquarters. Working tirelessly and diligently, he has overseen the Australian Army's largest single platform project. His achievements over several years of conspicuous service have been essential in allowing the Australian Army to actualise the final component of the Combined Arms Fighting System. Lieutenant Colonel Howard's work will ensure Australian soldiers have the best possible chance on a modern and contested battlefield. Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Howard, awarded the Conspicuous Service Cross. To be awarded the Conspicuous Service Cross, Brigadier Nicholas Wilson, for outstanding achievement as the Director, Strategic and Sensitive Issues Management, Army. Brigadier Wilson has exhibited extraordinary judgment and skillful application of policy in managing the Australian Army's most sensitive and complex issues. As Director of Strategic and Sensitive Issues Management, Brigadier Wilson looked after a demanding and complex portfolio, which required him to be immediately available and responsive to emerging situations. Throughout his tenure, Brigadier Wilson managed the resolution of serious incidents in a consistently fair, professional and transparent manner. He did so while also overseeing the Australian Army's contributions to critically important commissions and investigations. His personal leadership during critical incidents has had a direct benefit for the Army and the families of affected members. Brigadier Nicholas Wilson, awarded the Conspicuous Service Cross. To be awarded the Conspicuous Service Medal, Lieutenant Commander Alexander Finnis, for meritorious achievement as the Commanding Officer of HMS Glenelg on operations Resolute, Solania and Saville from December 2020 to October 2022. Under the command of HMAS Glenelg, Lieutenant Commander Finnis demonstrated leadership and strategic awareness which enabled regional engagement whilst deployed on operations. This involved units from the United States Coast Guard and the Marine Corps, the Fijian, German and Royal Navies, and with Vanuatu and Singapore authorities. His command ethos of empowerment at every level led to a high-functioning ships company which achieved domestic and international objectives. His dedication to inspiring and training the future workforce enhanced the fleet, and his commitment to engagement with external organisations has forever strengthened vital relationships. Lieutenant Commander Alexander Finnis, awarded the Conspicuous Service Medal. To be awarded the Conspicuous Service Medal, Captain David Hanna. For devotion to duty as the Director, Domestic and Regional Commitments and Director, Global United Nations and Counterterrorism, Captain Hanna has made a significant and commendable contribution to the management of the Australian Defence Force's military strategic commitments. Through judgment, tenacity and tremendous spirit, he overcame significant workforce challenges to garner interagency support and deliver required objectives, commonly working to condensed deadlines. This supported the shaping of Defence's initial contributions of military assistance to Ukraine and refinement of plans for the response to the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Through leadership, analysis and interpersonal skills, Captain Hanna's efforts significantly contributed to the success of strategic responses across the domestic and broader Indo-Pacific region. Captain David Hanna, awarded the Conspicuous Service Medal. To be awarded the Public Service Medal, Ms. Jennifer Hazelton, for outstanding public service in delivering evidence-based food labelling standards and information for customers. Ms. Hazelton led the development and implementation of a world-leading pregnancy warning label for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder on alcoholic beverages sold in Australia and New Zealand. She was a key contributor to outcomes and actions resulting from the review of food labelling law and policy. She played a critical role developing the government response and driving the technical work that followed. Ms. Hazelton has spent a career promoting nutrition, protecting public health, and supporting consumer understanding of food labels. Her leadership and quality of work have brought credit to herself and to Food Standards Australia New Zealand, showing Australia to be an international leader in food regulatory service. Ms. Jennifer Hazelton, awarded the Public Service Medal. To be awarded the Australian Fire Service Medal, Mr. Michael Blasiotto, for distinguished service as a member of an Australian Fire Service. Since 2001, Mr. Blasiotto has held several roles in the ACT Rural Fire Service, including Equipment Officer, Deputy Captain, Senior Deputy Captain, Captain and Vice President. He has seen the ACT region through its most extreme bushfire events in 2001, 2003, and in the 2019-20 season, where he captained the Geysers Creek Brigade while also serving on the front line. Mr. Blasiotto has been deployed to New South Wales, Victoria, and Queensland throughout his career, and also uses his operational knowledge to help inform and run multiple training courses for volunteers. Mr. Blasiotto always demonstrates his passion for community engagement and education to promote the safety and overall emergency preparedness of Canberrans, especially for those living in rural areas. Mr. Michael Blasiotto, awarded the Australian Fire Service Medal. We move now to Australian Bravery decorations. The late Mr. Richard Cater, accepted by Mrs. Nolene Cater, Mr. Peter Hanlon, and Mrs. Valerie Hanlon. To be awarded the Bravery Medal, Mr. Peter Hanlon and the late Mr. Richard Cater for displaying considerable bravery by their actions during a violent attack in Canberra in 2019. And to be awarded the Commendation for Brave Conduct, Mrs. Valerie Hanlon, commended for brave conduct for her actions during a violent attack. As Mr. and Mrs. Hanlon and Mr. and Mrs. Cater arrived home after dinner one night in 2019, their vehicle was approached by an unprovoked violent attacker. The offender was not known to the group, but as the incident ensued, they collectively showed bravery in the face of the sudden attack. The offender opened the front door and attacked the passenger, with the driver bravely trying to stop the assault. The offender directed his attention to the driver while another passenger exited the back of the car and attempted to restrain him, resulting in also being violently attacked. While Mr. Hanlon and Mr. Cater bravely fought back, Mrs. Hanlon ran to the neighbouring house to ask them to call emergency services for help. Tragically, Mr. Richard Cater lost his life as a result of this incident. Each demonstrated bravery in the face of danger and deserve to be recognised by their nation. Mr. Peter Hanlon and the late Mr. Richard Cater awarded the Bravery Medal, accepted on behalf of the late Mr. Richard Cater by Mrs. Nolene Cater, and Mrs. Valerie Hanlon awarded the Commendation for Brave Conduct. To be awarded the Commendation for Brave Conduct, Ms. Katrina Lovelock. Commended for brave conduct for her actions apprehending 2 males who held her and her friends hostage in Benithan in the ACT on 19 July 1999. At around 8 p.m. that day, Ms. Lovelock was at home with friends when 2 armed men burst into their property and held them hostage. Over the next 4 hours, the offenders threatened to kill the group, injuring some of them in the process. At an opportune moment, Ms. Lovelock fought back against the offenders. Her brave action gave the group an opportunity to call the police, who arrived and took the men into custody. Ms. Katrina Lovelock, awarded the Commendation for Brave Conduct. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the presentations this afternoon. I now invite recipients to join Her Excellency for a formal photograph at the state entrance. After a few moments, everyone else is welcome to move out into the dining room, and if you're game, out onto the lakeside lawn for refreshments. Our photographer will be capturing photographs with the recipients, their guests, and the Governor-General during the reception this afternoon. For those who need to leave early, please let a member of our staff know. For any recipient who has not had their group photo taken, in the last 20 minutes or so, the Governor-General will move into position so we can ensure everyone gets a group photo. And finally, please don't forget to collect your insignia and warrants before departing today. Please now stand for the departure of Her Excellency and the recipients.